The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Oh, well, here we are.
Yeah.
We're live.
Bad if you weren't ready. Here we are.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to today's Hackin Cast. How certifications help you find great people for your security team or get on one with Kip Boyle, which he disappeared, but we promise he'll be back. There he is. All right.
Amazing.
Yeah, I didn't want to have a wardrobe malfunction, so I had to go take care of that.
Well, Kip, it's good to have you back on this Hacking Cast with us. Glad that you're willing to join us. We're super excited about learning more about this as well as learning more about your training class.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, always happy to be here hanging out with you guys, and you gave me the warmest welcome today, by asking about the goats and how they were doing and whether I needed to milk one. So, for the people who missed it last time, this is your chance to fill them in.
Yeah. Well, so last time, what was your colleague's name that was with you?
Wes Schreiner.
Oh, that's right, Wes. So Wes was talking about his goats, and he just blurted out, "Hey, well, Kip's coming over to milk my goat later." And we all, of course, have the maturity level of like 16-year-old boys, and we all started giggling and couldn't stop. It was the church giggles.
The church giggles. That's great. Yeah, well, I gotta tell you, I wasn't expecting that line either. He totally caught me flat-footed, which is not like him. He's usually very very thoughtful in advance about what he's going to say and so forth. And so I was just like, what the what? I knew he was talking about because he's got a farm. He's got a little farm, and he's got little kids. I got little kids, and we've been talking about me bringing my little kids over so they could, just kind of get the farm experience and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, Wes, thanks a lot.
Yes, I think we were all very much like OS, but that is why we do these pre-show banters. Just so you guys are aware, this is not the actual content. This is what we call pre-show banter, where you show up early because we show up early. We show up early because you show up early. It's this vicious cycle that we all just adore, that we call pre-show banter. So, and
we're done. That's it.
And here we go.
I mean, goats. What else is there to say, right? Milk the goats. Man, that was just weird.
Okay, guys. So I got this text message from a friend of mine, and she says it's do a grouch a favor day. Today, apparently today is the day we're supposed to, what?
I said I have had no favors.
It says apparently today is the day we're supposed to take the opportunity to help a grumpy person experience a sweeter side of life. So what are you doing to help a grumpy person experience the sweeter side of life? I want to know.
Well, I think somebody needs to do that for me, because I'm the grumpy person. So I'll definitely let my kids in on this idea, and they need to do something sweet for me. And then maybe
my kids apparently get the memo because they were not very good this morning.
Yeah, Jason and I started off bright and early at 7 something this morning Eastern time, scrambling, but everything is great and going good with Joff's class. So speaking of classes, we've got Kip's going to have a class for us coming up soon. You want to talk a little bit about that, Kip?
Yeah, happy to do it. And we're going to do it in 2 formats, right, Velda? We're going to do like a virtual format, and then the plan is to do it live also in San Diego, Way West.
Right.
Yay. I'll put a link for Way West in.
Yeah, great. So it's going to be the same class, just delivered, two different ways. But the idea here is to help people build, security teams that really get stuff done. And what does that take? It's really a combination of two things. The first is that you've actually got to get talented people and actually get them to agree to join your team. And then, okay, so now you've got this team, now, how can you as the team leader, build on that and become an influencer in your organization? And I see people struggling with this. They're tired of people telling them after the fact, hey, we built this thing, please go secure it. And that's not ideal. That's actually setting you up for failure, right? The rest of the org is like setting you up for failure. And so what the security leaders really want to be able to do is they want to know about changes long before those changes are ever actually implemented in code or implemented in a new network architecture or whatever. And so that's the big struggle. And what I've noticed is that the people who are more influential, the other business leaders of the organization will actually come to them when changes are just still ideas before anybody's actually submitted a business case or allocated a budget or anything like that, or before any code is cut. And they say, what do you think? And that, to me, if you're a security leader, if you're a CISO or whatever your title is, if you're a security leader, that's what you really want. That's kind of the holy grail of collaboration at the highest level. But what I've noticed is that a lot of security leaders are stuck in their programs. They're actually doing work inside of their programs, and they're often doing that because they don't have all the right people.
Right.
And so it's magical when you can stop working in your program and you can start working on your program, right? This is a little like entrepreneurial maxim that I kind of stole from people who talk about working in your business versus working on your business. And so if that's the blocker for a security leader, is that they can't work on their program because they're too busy working in their program, it's usually because the team isn't the right team. They don't have enough people, or they don't have enough of the right people, or some combination of those two things. And so that's what this class is going to be about. It's going to be about getting enough of the right people on your team so that you can let go of the daily work, still be involved, still support people, still set them up for success, still make sure work's getting done, but freeing you up to build the kinds of relationships with the other business leaders in your org that's going to make them think about you as somebody who is trying to help the org succeed and not just being Dr. No all the time.
Right.
And it'd be a hard thing to let go.
Yeah. I think
I've been there.
Yeah. Belda has definitely set us up for success on our team. I mean, she definitely lets us run with the ball, even if we fumble it sometimes. But that is definitely it. When you have a small team, and of course, security teams are always, usually on the smaller side of the org. So that is imperative to be able to let go and not be in the day-to-day, in the minutia of all of it. So I think that'll be a really, really great class coming up.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have several classes that are actually coming up next week as well. I'll put a link in live chat. For those of you that are on GoToWebinar, we use Discord for our live chat, just so you know. People that registered via GoToWebinar will get a certificate of completion tomorrow around this time for that you can use for CPE credits. If you're live streaming on YouTube, you don't get a cert of completion. You'll need to come over and get registered on GoToWebinar. But some of the classes we have next week, we have Applied Purple Teaming, Modern Web App Pen Testing, Intro to Industrial Control Systems, which is a new class. And we also have one of our favorites, Securing the Cloud Foundations with Andrew Krug. Those are some of the classes. I'll make sure to put it in the chat.
Yeah, we're really excited about all of those, Megan. And Kent and Jordan did a whole rewrite on their it's Applied Purple Teaming, correct?
Yeah.
So they did a whole rewrite on it. So it's kind of like a brand new class again too for us. So
yeah, we haven't had that in over a year, I think, and people were asking for it. So that's exciting. And they joined us last week for our Hackin Cast So that was fun hanging out with them. They're good people. Good people.
Absolutely. So, you know what? I don't know if we have welcomed Jason the Hawk. Jason the Hawk joined us on a full-time basis, 2 weeks ago? Jason, he's been around with us.
24th, I think it was
24th
my first day as a full-time.
Yeah.
So Jason has joined us on a full-time basis here, and we're super excited to have him on a full-time basis with our team. So welcome. Welcome, Jason. We're happy you're here. So
Yeah, we need more Jasons, right?
we
Yes.
do need more Jasons.
Absolutely. We need all the Jasons.
Well, let's not.
That
let's
could be a
not
lot
get-
of Jasons.
let's not overdo it.
There's already at least 2 in the company.
Yeah, I think that one on our team is plenty. It's just the right amount of Jason that just perfect.
Hey, look, I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah, we realize this is your thought process. We've heard this on several occasions.
So
I'm
would
pretty
love
sure
to-
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure I have many leather-bound books.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sure you do. Sure you do.
So we'd love to know where you're from.
Yeah, I saw I did see that we have the
Sweden.
checking in. Sweden.
Sweden. I do have a question of the day too, if I can find
Oh,
it.
we do.
So let me get over here and let me see if I can find it. It was a pretty good one, actually.
So good that Nebraska, of course, you guys, all you Huskers.
We are.
Yes.
The banana and the monkey are my go-to. Like,
Yes. Rieschen, where is that? Oh, wait, was that Sweden? No. Rieschen, you got me. I don't know what that means. Are they on like the Death Star? Is that a place still? Is it? Wait. Oh yeah, Orlando, of course, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
That.
You got to go with Epcot because that's definitely Orlando. If I go with like Magic Kingdom, that could
Yeah.
be kind of
That-
anywhere,
California. That could be
unless you
Mexico.
really know your castles.
New Mexico. Ah. I'm joining from sunny Virginia, where it's going to get in the 70s this week at one day. So I'm super excited about that. But I'm sure our weather's kind of like Nebraska. You guys can be 70, 80 one day and the next day in the 20s. So
So
we have
bipolar. So
very-
bipolar.
yes, so very swingy weather here. Where are you, Kip?
Oh, I'm in the Seattle area.
Seattle. I have never been to the Pacific Northwest before. I've been to, California, of course, but I've not been up. I think the farthest north I've been is LA area in California.
Wow, that's not
Okay.
very far north.
I know, it's not very far north at all.
I've never
West.
heard of anybody
South,
call
isn't it?
Los Angeles north.
Well, it's the north, the most north I've gone in the west is what I meant to say.
Okay,
Oh.
here's today's question of the day.
All right.
Experts say it should only take a little more than 5 minutes a day to do what at work? I say work.
It's definitely not nap.
work.
Um,
I'm going to go ahead and join Jake and say work.
Sleep.
no more than 5 minutes a day at work to do this task.
Use the restroom.
Is it check email?
Lunch?
Work if you hate your job.
To do what at
He-
work?
Maxwell Smart. Interesting.
Maybe it's FaceTime with your boss.
Well, that's kind of close.
Well, it's definitely not gifting because that takes up a significant portion of my workday. Significant.
Oh my gosh, Megan would be the queen of gifts.
Yes. And I it's my love language. I can't help it. Finding the perfect GIF is just magic.
It's a gift.
It is. It is the gift that keeps on gifting.
That's right. 5 minutes to drink coffee.
No.
Oh, no.
5-minute abs. I like that.
Hey, Maxwell.
5-minute abs. That is a good one.
The
Ooh,
panic
have your
attack.
own private existential crisis. Might take much longer than 5 minutes.
Yes, I was gonna say that lasts at least an hour for me. At least.
That's like an all-day thing for you.
That's
I like
very,
Ben from Kansas City.
Yeah.
Have your own private existential crisis.
yeah, yep.
That's awesome.
I think Ben is going to win the the one that hits us right here the best.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'll tell you
I'm
what,
gonna say-
Jake and I were at a conference last week, and I got this on a t-shirt. I don't think you can see it, but I was so badly wanted to do this. You're on mute.
Oh yeah, that's so
It takes
funny.
a little bit more than 5 minutes a day to say, you're on mute. We
Yeah.
see you moving, but you're on mute.
I think my other favorite shirt was Cover Your Sass.
Cover your sass.
Yeah, that was a
But
good one.
the
Cover Your
best
Sass.
swag of all.
Oh,
No, it's something in a gunny sack.
Yeah,
Because
for marketing
it
purposes.
is.
For marketing purposes.
Well, for what's the right for non-copyright?
Yeah.
oh yeah,
They said it was something in a gunny sack.
gotcha.
Water
I'm
cooling
picking up what you're laying down.
Cover your naps.
Cover your nas.
Okay, so has anybody gotten the answer? I don't think anybody's
I don't
gotten the
know.
answer yet.
We don't know the answer.
We don't know the
Yeah, we don't
answer.
know.
Yeah, we don't know it.
Take
Only you know
a
it,
little more
Bella.
than 5 minutes to do this at work a day. Let me read it again. Experts say it should only take a little more than 5 minutes a day to do what at work.
Install Windows updates.
Yeah, good luck with that.
False.
Practice safe InfoSec. That's funny. Stretch. Crush your soul.
Maybe like check in with your leadership.
You're kind of on the right track, Megan.
Crush your soul into the required shape for work. Excellent.
I mean, I do have to say,
I think we're going to need to take that one offline, Kip.
if you love your job, I mean, you're really not working, right?
Yeah, it really, that is so true. Like, I mean, there are days that I'm like, I get paid to do this. I can't even believe that
Right.
somebody's allowing me
Well,
to
if
do.
you want to do it for free, Megan, I mean, that was.
Oh, absolutely not.
Let's rewind that. Let's reel it in. That's good. But, my kids, of course, think that I'm just like, have the best job. And I'm like, look, guys, I had to pull my time in the trenches. You don't just get this straight out the gate like this. You have to definitely put your time in, and then you may, and even then you may not even get this awesome of a job. So
My kids always tell me, all you do is sit at your computer all day. I said, exactly.
yeah, you're right. You can too. Learn cybersecurity.
Yeah, I worked my butt off to get here, but yeah, that's all I do now.
Yep, that's right. So do we have an answer, Velda, or are we
Well,
just gonna?
we kind of do. It's kind of a partial. It is. So the question of the day was, experts say it should only take a little more than 5 minutes a day to do what at work. And she said daily meeting with the boss, and the answer is have a meeting. I
Oh my
like
God.
it. 5
Like
minutes.
any
5 minutes. And we're out.
meeting?
Like per person in the meeting?
So
Right?
are we now calling Mondays 5 minutes?
5-minute Monday. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call
Down.
it meeting Monday Madness.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, it really, but I mean, in this day and age, it's really the only time you get to like see your peers and your boss and stuff is in meetings. Unfortunately, it's not like we can, swing by each other's desks and say, hey, how's it going and stuff. So our meetings end up being like more, getting to know each other a lot.
We can't.
Unless you get stuck in the airport with them.
We can't go at the water cooler and
Yeah.
chat for an hour.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what
Maxwell Smart says pre-show banner takes longer than that.
I know.
It could have been an email. Just kidding.
Yeah.
So
I
basically,
mean,
what
I'm
you're saying.
definitely a person where like a phone call is definitely unnecessary. Like a text will do me just fine. Like I don't like if my phone rings, I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, somebody's calling me. What the hell? But I'm definitely not a phone type of person. Oh, hold on. Let's see what's going on here.
That's funny.
So Monday, guys, after 5 minutes, we could say, all right, well, I'm out. We could just take off.
Well, I'll tell you what, they say it ain't over till the fat lady sings. So guess what? You're gonna be waiting on me.
Listen, I would never ever say such words.
Agreed.
What, that Nelda can sing? No.
Hey, I've actually heard you sing karaoke. So remember that time in New Orleans? Let's not talk about it. Never mind. We were on Bourbon Street. That was a night to remember. Da, 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 da. Oh,
Or
geez.
forget, however
Yeah.
you want.
All right, now we have to do karaoke.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, speaking
Yeah.
of karaoke, we usually do have some type of an open mic night at Wild West Hackin Fest. Speaking of that, we should probably talk a little bit about Wild West Hackin Fest. Who'd like
Yeah,
to?
I did put a link.
Go ahead, Megan.
I did put a link in live chat, but we will be coming to San Diego, so we're super excited about it. We're going to have pre-conference training. Those dates will be May 3rd and 4th, and the conference dates itself will be the 4th through the 6th. We're going to be at the Wyndham San Diego Bayside, which is super, super exciting. And like, I think that the coolest part of all of it is the fact that we're going to have dinner on the Midway. I am like, it's like a Top Gun, like just dream. So yeah, I'm super excited about it.
You know
I
what?
brought up
Megan's going
nerd
to set up
volleyball.
a volleyball tournament.
Yeah, I said nerd volleyball. I mean, I think that it's stellar idea,
It
but I
is.
don't know if that's.
It's, the thing I love about Wild West Hackin Fest is we try to make it more than just a hackers conference, right? We incorporate a lot of different things. Last year in Reno, we had the mechanical bull and calf roping.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping
The
we
real
can
cowboy.
Yeah, and a real life cowboy.
Yeah.
He
Yeah, that was
good.
amazing.
Yeah,
Carl.
we love Carl. He's our guy. But we did that. We had dinner and we had that. Just a really fun time. But then we also had the workshops. And I think Kip, you did a workshop there, didn't you? Did you do a
Yep.
workshop?
Yeah, I did.
And then we had all these talks and we played backdoors and breaches and we had an escape room and just a multitude of things that you may not find at other conferences. But I think it's because our staff just wants to make things interesting and keep it really fresh. And we did some augmented reality at our event in Deadwood when we were virtual last year. This year we'll be able to do it. I mean, in San Diego, we'll be able to do it in person. So
Yeah.
it's really yeah, it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And we've got. I mean, the great part about it, if your company won't let you travel, or if you're not comfortable traveling, you can still do this all virtually. So
Mhm.
it's a hybrid, in person and virtual. So it's a great opportunity. And I'm losing my voice. How do you like
Yeah,
that?
and I think that we kind of made the call that we want to make sure that we keep Wild West Hackin Fest to have a virtual component even after all of the COVID crisis is over, because we want to make sure that we include as many different people as we can, and a lot of our overseas people can't travel to the U.S. There's all kinds of different constraints, so we want to make sure that everybody's included. So that's why we're gonna keep the virtual component as part of our conferences going forward. I think it's a good idea to make sure to capture as many people as we can, because there's a lot of, I mean, it's not just this of us just chatting. I mean, there's a lot of really valuable information that is learned at these conferences. So.
Right.
That's a good question on Discord from Mary. How can you have classes on the 4th and have the con begin on the 4th at the same time?
In the evening.
Yes. So the classes run Tuesday and Wednesday from 8 to 5, basically, or 9 to 5. And then the conference itself will kick off at about 6 o'clock Wednesday evening. So yeah, we don't want you to miss anything. We don't want you to miss out on your family. But if you're only coming to the conference, you could arrive on Wednesday afternoon and you would still be there in time. Also, Maxwell Smart asked about Deadwood. And yes, we do have dates for Deadwood. They're not on the website, but I can tell you if you want to start planning. The pre-conference training will be October 11th and 12th. And the conference date itself will be the 12th through the 14th.
I'm super stoked about that one.
So,
Well, with that, it looks like we are right at the top of the hour, so we should probably let Kip get going here. But thanks everybody again for joining us today for our Hackin Cast, and we'll see you on the back end.
thanks everyone. Thanks, Kip.
Yeah, you bet. All right, so now it's time for me to share my screen. I think it worked.
Yep, you're good.
Whew. I do so much Zoom that GoToWebinar just freaks me out. Always afraid I'm gonna just like totally do it wrong. All right, welcome everybody. Really appreciate that you chose to spend some time today here. I know that there's a lot of other things you could be doing, and I'm just grateful that you decided to be here. And so my goal is to make this worth your while. So what we're going to talk about is certifications, and what I'm trying to do with the session today is cast a vision for not only hiring managers for how they can actually get certifications to help them build the team that they really want to build, but I'm also interested in helping job hunters figure out how to make certifications work for them. We're in a really weird time right now. I'll unpack that a little bit as I go. Listen, why should you listen to me? I've been working in the team building space for many years, and I've done team building. I've done security team building in many different contexts. I've done it on active duty in the Air Force. I've done it in the private sector and in consulting, and I've also done it in a kind of a blue team environment. And today, I work as a virtual chief information security officer. Previously, I worked as the chief information security officer for an insurance company for 7 years. And so today what I'm doing is really the same job that I did when I was on a payroll, except now I get to do it for people who aren't reluctant to do these things that I keep recommending, which is fantastic. And so I get to work with a lot of different people, and I had to build my own team from scratch at Cyber Risk Opportunities. Okay, so that's just a little bit about me. Now, one of the sources that I'm speaking from today is called the Cybersecurity Hiring Manager Handbook, and this is an open source project that that was launched last fall after spending most of 2021 working with a large team of volunteers to first outline in detail what the handbook should actually say, and then converting the outline into prose. And so if you are a hiring manager, then I suggest that you screenshot this, and I'll drop a copy of the slides into the slides channel after we're done here today. So if you just want to focus and not take notes, that'll be just fine. So you can go to GitHub and you can read the handbook in markup or markdown language, or you can go to Netlify, the URL across the top of your screen, and you can read it in, in a more pretty way, the way the screenshot here shows you. But the whole idea of the hiring manager's handbook is I've been helping people get cybersecurity jobs for a couple of years now, and as I was doing that, I was seeing them struggle. And I saw enough of their struggles that some themes started to emerge, and that's when I realized hiring managers were struggling too to find them, right? And there's this big chasm. And so I went looking for a resource that I could give to hiring managers, and I didn't find anything that I thought was really going to do the job. There was all kinds of stuff, but nothing really quite fit. And so that was kind of the genesis for the hiring manager handbook. Now, I'm going to actually teach an entire 16-hour course that's based on some of the material that's in the hiring manager's handbook in the future. So I don't want to unpack this too much today, but I just want to make you aware that this is out there, and I think it's an excellent resource. And because it's an open source project, you can use it for whatever you want. And if you think that the handbook is missing something, or if we get something wrong, then you can submit a pull request, and we'll go ahead and take a look at that, right? So it's a living thing. For those of you who are on the webcast today, the Hackin cast today, and you're a job seeker or a hunter, and you're here because you're like, yeah, I want to know what the heck's going on with those hiring managers. I want to get into their mind. Well, so that's what this podcast is about. And so my co-host is Jason Dion. If you don't know about this podcast, you might want to check it out. If you don't know who Jason Dion is, he runs a company called Dion Training, and he has courses on Udemy and also on his own website, and he helps people pass their certifications. So guess what? When I was thinking about certifications, I was talking with Jason about his perspective as somebody who spent years helping tens of thousands of people run the certification gauntlet. And so anyway, so we've got a whole podcast here for those of you who are trying to get into cyber, who are trying to figure out maybe how to get promoted. That's what that podcast is all about. So again, today you're either a hiring manager and you're trying to figure out how can I how can I build the team that I really want, and how do certifications fit into it. I think certifications can be used a little differently than the way that I commonly see them used today, so that you can have more effective hiring. And if you're a job hunter, then I think you can change your certification strategy a little bit, and I think you can get a lot more value out of the energy that you put into it. So that's what I want to talk about today. So I see certifications or certs as sometimes they're angels, right? They do really great stuff for us. If you're a hiring manager, it's helping you to screen thousands of resumes down to a manageable number, because you can just say, here, this cert is required. Now, if you're a job hunter, this is actually really good, because if you pay attention to the job posting and you see which certs are required, and you actually plagiarize the heck out of the job posting, which you should do, and get those certs, if you have them, right, into your resume, so that when you do the upload, the keyword analysis is going to line up, right, and it's going to make your resume pop to the top of the stack, right? So certs can be very helpful for both sides of the equation here, but they can also be devilish, right? Because if you are a job hunter or an applicant, getting a cert is not always easy. They cost time and they cost money, and even when you finally get them, you have to maintain them, and it's difficult sometimes to know which one to get. And I'll talk about that little problem and what you can do about it in a little bit. If you're a hiring manager, you probably also realize that certs are a difficult thing to do to screen with, right? So, and maybe you have control over which certs appear in your job descriptions, and maybe you don't. So, or maybe you're just not really paying that much attention to it, and so there's probably some people out there that don't have certifications that are really excellent and would be wonderful people for you to have on your team, but because of the way that you're using certs for filtering, you're just not even seeing them. And then of course, the perennial problem for hiring managers is there are a lot of paper tigers out there. That is to say, there's people who have certifications, but they really can't solve real world problems, and they can't really even do very well in a basic job interview. Just a basic, set of knowledge or hard skills types questions, they don't do very well, and so you can waste a lot of time as a hiring manager trying to use certifications as a screening tool. So now, paper tiger, I actually went and looked up what, where does this phrase actually come from, and it's actually what I found is it's a literal English translation of a Chinese phrase that really means something that appears to be powerful or threatening, but actually isn't, and can't withstand challenges that come against it. So I don't know. I just thought maybe that'd be a really interesting little factoid. I always tend to dig into this stuff because I'm really interested where these little sayings come from. But anyway, on we go. So I've started wondering, like, what if job seekers could get more value from certifications, and what if they could also at the same time help hiring managers find people who can, solve real world problems. And so I think this is possible, and what I'm going to be advocating for here is skills-based certifications. And I in my experience, right, I haven't done the research on it, so I'm not going to tell you that that I've got hard studies behind this, but in my experience as a hiring manager, I think skills-based certifications are more predictive of success on the job than are the traditional multiple choice question type exams. But there's problems, right, with this right now, and one of the problems is there aren't a lot of skills-based certifications available, and we've also got a lot of the more traditional certs are more established. They have more marketing behind them, and some of them are actually codified into regulations. So, for example, DoD Directive 8570 and then the new one 8140, you actually can't even be interviewed or considered seriously for a information assurance position unless you have one of the named certifications. And most of them are not skills-based certifications; they're traditional. So so if you're going to go into DoD, that's going to kind of, as a hiring manager, that kind of ties your hands right on this topic. But if you're hiring in the private sector, then you do have more latitude, than you would in a DoD situation. But so there's some other good things about traditional certifications. I mean, other than helping get you through HR screening, I always look at these as a demonstration of intent or passion of a candidate, because they can be a very helpful learning tool if you take the time to try and really learn what it is that you're studying, rather than just studying for the purposes of passing the exam and checking the box. I saw a photo on LinkedIn recently where somebody had they were studying for Network Plus, and they had actually built a straight through Cat6 cable and a crossover cable, and just put a photo up there. And I just thought, yeah, that's it, right? Don't just memorize the wire positions, right? Actually, get a length of Cat5 cable and a crimper and some tools, and actually, do it for yourself. That takes time, but I think it's the way to go. And of course, there's some cons to these traditional certs, right? No guarantee the holder can solve real world problems. There's all kinds of test taking strategies that you can learn that's going to give you an edge, even if you haven't studied all that well, or you're kind of shaky on the material. You can probably eke out a passing score in 1 or 2 tries, so you can tick the box, but you don't have anything to offer. If you're a person with a test taking challenge, you're at a disadvantage. I've met some very, very smart, capable, fantastically skilled people who just don't test very well, and there is lots of research about people who are just naturally disadvantaged at these standardized tests, and these tests are also known to be biased, and so that's also a blocker, right, with these traditional certs. So again, I like skills-based certifications. I think they help candidates build experience. Hiring managers can be more confident about who they're hiring, and I think that a skills-based certification better demonstrates the passion of the candidate, because they are aware of this distinction, and they're showing that they're willing to go through some extra effort to actually pass a skills-based certification. There's some problems, right, which I was mentioning before, which is right now, if all you possess is a skills-based certification, then you're not always going to get through the HR screening, depending on how the job description is written. So if you're a hiring manager, this is something that you really have to think about. Now, one of the principles in the hiring manager handbook is that hiring managers should treat hiring as one of the most important, most strategic activities that they can perform for their organization. And the truth of the matter is that a great number of hiring managers may say that they agree with that, but I would challenge, do they really put in the amount of time necessary and thoughtfulness necessary to actually demonstrate that's true? And I can tell you for myself, I didn't always do that. I wasn't always in that frame of mind. Sometimes it was just like, I'm so crushed with work that I just need a body in the seat. It's like, hey, do you have a pulse? Can you fog a mirror? Get in here, we need your help, right? And I wasn't always very thoughtful about who these folks were, and I kind of treated it as a transaction, when really with the hiring manager handbook and a lot of the sage wisdom that's in there, where experienced hiring managers are saying, look, if you treat it as a transaction, then you're not going to be setting yourself up for success, as well as if you treated it as a life cycle, that people come and go, and that you should be thinking about it as a pipeline, and you should be thinking about where are the talented people. So we talk about going to way west. Well, if you're a hiring manager, you should always be thinking about, where am I going to find that next great hire, even if your team is completely filled right now, because eventually one of those people is going to leave. And so a rule of thumb that I always give for hiring managers is you should have 1 or 2 people at the very least that you have in your mind, so that the next opportunity that you have to bring somebody on board, you already know who you're going to go to. And you've already thought about, are they a good fit? Do they have the right skills, and so on and so forth. But anyway, so sorry for the aside. Another con of skills-based certifications is they can cost more. They don't have to, but they often do in terms of money, but also in terms of time. It takes longer to prepare yourself to pass, and the test itself can be a lot more stressful and a lot more difficult. And so you could see why some people might feel that that skills-based certifications are kind of a pain. Right, when a traditional cert will do the job nicely when they define the job as being, submitting a resume and getting it through the HR screening process. But getting through HR screening is a big deal, but you also have to do well in the interviews, and then ultimately you've got to perform on the job. So I would encourage job hunters to think more broadly, right, about what a certification actually, how you should be using certifications. So on that note, let's take a little case study here. So let's say, well, actually, I was talking with Jason Dion, and I was asking him, like, hey, I want to talk about this. What are you seeing? And he said, well, he goes, take CEH, for example. He goes, I teach thousands of people each year how to pass the CEH traditional exam. And he said, CEH, he goes, it doesn't really have a great reputation. It's actually got a pretty poor reputation. It's an older cert, and it's based on a traditional test, multiple choice test, and all the things that I talked about before. He said there's paper tigers everywhere, but it's just been around for a long time. And he said really what would be better is if hiring managers switched from CEH and would adopt more like a pen test plus, which is newer and has a mixture of multiple choice test and hands-on exercises. And he said that's giving a better result for both job hunters and for hiring managers. And he said, of course, the ultimate certification, if you're going to want to be doing network penetration testing, right, is an OSCP, right? It has a great reputation. There's very few paper tigers out there. If you can get an OSCP, right, you're probably going to be able to solve real world problems, right? Which really, as a job hunter, that should be your gold standard for yourself, not just that you have a cert. But I said, okay, well, Jason, I go, then why don't you teach OSCP? How come your business is built on, CEH and Pentest Plus? And he said, well, he goes, despite the fact that I see that as the reality, hiring managers are still asking for CEH. He said it's just out there, and it's so well entrenched and established, whether it's because it's part of the hiring standards at the Department of Defense, and or it's just sort of been around a long time, and hiring managers just really aren't paying attention to this. And so he said, so the demand just isn't there. And I just thought, gosh, that's no good. How are we going to turn the corner on this if we just continue to let old practices perpetuate? So I was just thinking there's got to be a better way. And so let's think about another possibility here, which is the anti-siphon infosec training that's put on by Black Hills Information Security. Now, when I first learned about this, that was kind of what got me going on this whole topic. I listened to John Strand, and I checked out their certification, their ACE-T certification, and I talked to some people actually in the company about it, and that really encouraged me. And so I started going off and trying to figure out, well, what if people started doing this anti-siphon training? Would it help them demonstrate to hiring managers that they were, actually going to be able to solve real world problems? And that's when I realized that it's not as simple as that, because of the things that I've talked about already. But I think that as hiring managers, we should be starting to change our thinking about what kind of certs we should be advertising for if we can, what are the different options out there for people to get in terms of skills-based certification. Now, I'm biased in favor of this. I think that should be obvious, right? Here I am on a Hackin cast, and it's sponsored by the same organization that puts out the anti-siphon training and the ACE-T certification. But this is not the only skills-based certification out there. But I do think it's very good. It has a really good balance of cost versus benefit, and it's got some really good features as far as being able to actually learn real skills and actually prove that you've learned those real skills. So I thought we could just take a quick look here. So these are the goals of the ACE-T program, and with the challenge here, right, is that employers have to know this exists and have to ask for it. Hiring managers have to agree, that this is a great place for people to learn what they need to learn. And hiring managers need to go to HR departments and actually say to them, hey, we need to change our job descriptions. And if you can't stop asking for CEH, well, then maybe what you need to do is you need to say, CEH required, but something else that's skills-based preferred, right? Just to kind of help put more emphasis on the skills-based certifications. And so if you don't know how it works, ACE-T is actually based on what you do in a cyber range, and there's 10 levels of ACE-T certification, and you can work through those. And it allows you to take some training and then go and actually demonstrate that you know what you're doing. And then you get a certification, which you can then submit to whoever needs to know that you're actually certified. And ACE-T actually has a level lookup function, right? So you're not just hand carrying or emailing off some random PDF. That employers can actually do a lookup to find out if you've actually achieved these certifications. So there's different levels. And you can read these slides for yourself after I drop them into the slide channel. I just thought I would kind of boil it down into its essence here and share that with you. Yep, and there's some pros, right? I've kind of talked about this. There's some cons. I've really talked about this. The cons that I talked about in general also apply to ACE-T. So yeah, nothing new to say there. But I think it's reasonable to also ask the question, well, what about capture the flags, right? What about try hack me, hack the box, and CFTs in general? So isn't that really what the ACE-T certification is? Isn't it kind of, why shouldn't I just go off and do CTFs and use that as my skills-based certification? And you know what? I think there's a lot of value for CTFs. You know, I interviewed John Strand, Jason and I did for a recent podcast episode. If you haven't seen that, you should go check that out because he says a lot of really insightful things. And I was asking him like, well, why did you create anti-siphon? Why did you create ACE certifications and so forth? And this is when I really started to get clued in to the value here. And anyway, one of the things he said, he's like, I love interviewing candidates that have done really, really well on CTFs, and so so it's great. Now, but John runs a company that is focused on network penetration testing, right? If you're trying to go get a job at a different kind of company where you're just going to be on the staff inside of an infosec department inside of a larger enterprise, that there probably isn't going to be such an awareness of CTFs as a basis for knowing what your skills are. There might be, there might not be. So, but that's one of the problems with CTFs though, is that it's great for skills building, but the emphasis is really heavily on winning and not as much on learning. And there's no highly recognized certification here. And it can be harder for an employer who wants to do background checks to verify accomplishments on CTFs. They just may not be familiar with it. Certainly HR professionals are probably not familiar with it. So, all right. So having said all that, I want to make some very specific recommendations to hiring managers, and then I want to make some very specific recommendations to job hunters around how you can better use certifications in the job market. So if you're a hiring manager, I really want you to go to your HR rep and talk to them and say, I want to change our job description so that there's more skills-based requirements or preferences in there. And hiring managers, I want you to go out and do your research, because anti-siphon and ACE-T is just one place where you can get skills-based certifications. There's other places that that they can be gotten. So, but I just think you're going to have a much better time if you're filtering candidates based on skills-based certifications. And if you have to, like if you can't drop CEH, for example, because it's required for whatever reason, then you can go find a skills-based certification and say, well, CEH required, but OSCP preferred, or something like that. The other thing I want to encourage hiring managers to do in general, right, is go get the handbook and study it. Take a look at it. If you haven't thought about hiring as a in a life cycle perspective, then I think the handbook's going to help you with that, and it could give you other ideas, right, for how to use certifications and to use other criteria in order to identify great candidates for your team. So just one quick example. A lot of the hiring managers that contributed to the handbook really talked a lot about culture and fit, and so we really started to try to figure out, well, how do you include people skills in addition to hard skills? And so the handbook talks about that. And in particular, we had a recent contribution from a hiring manager about this. And there's a book called The Talent War, which I want to bring to your attention. The Talent War. It's a very good book. It really talks about a way to hire people where, rather than hiring them primarily based on their hard skills, you are actually hiring them based on core skills that cannot be taught, but that people sort of show up with. And these are more people-oriented skills, more around grit and determination. And it's a fascinating book. So if you haven't taken a look at that book yet, I highly recommend it. Okay, so if you're a job hunter, what is it that you should be doing here? Well, you don't have any control over the job descriptions, right? You don't have any control over which certifications hiring managers are asking for, but you still have to figure this out, right? So as skills-based certifications gain wider acceptance, and I think they will over time, my recommendation is that you're going to get the traditional cert that's most likely to open the door for you. And a lot of people say, well, these certifications are all over the place, and different employers are asking for different certifications. How do I navigate that? And my advice is, well, first of all, be really clear on where it is you want to work. Get really, really clear about what industry you want to be in, get really clear about whether you want to be in a small, medium, or large organization. The more you can narrow your focus down, the better you're going to have in decoding this issue of which certification should I get. So get very, very focused, and then make sure that if you need a traditional cert, you get that, but then also pair that, right, with a complementary skills-based certification so you can actually stand out, so you can actually signal to the hiring manager who sees your resume because you have CEH that you also have OSCP or something like that. So I thought I'd just show you like a real quick example here. So let's say you want to get a job as a pen tester and you want to work at a large financial services company. And so you start looking at job descriptions and you see something like this. So here I just went out to LinkedIn Jobs, which I recommend people use LinkedIn Jobs as either your primary or one of your primary search sources for openings. So here's a cybersecurity analyst penetration testing at National Bank of Arizona, oddly enough, located in Tacoma, Washington. I couldn't quite figure that one out. And you can see that they want a certified ethical hacker or equivalent as a plus, right? So, you know, it's so popular, CEH, and I just think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction from hiring managers a lot of times because they certainly do have other choices, but or equivalent, right? So if you have an equivalent of CEH, how do you actually structure your resume so that it actually gets through the applicant tracking system? And this is where you just have to plagiarize the heck out of the job description, right? Notice that certified ethical hacker, that they actually spell it CE and then the vertical bar and then the letter H. You better make sure that you're actually doing it that way and not just saying CEH without the vertical bar, because their tracking system may not be smart enough to parse that. So you've got to be really, really literal on this stuff. Now, if let's say you've got Pen Test Plus, you've already got that, and you're seeing this, what can I do? Well, it says or equivalent, right? So you can put in your resume Pen Test Plus, and then you can say equivalent to Certified Ethical Hacker, CE vertical bar H, right? So that way, the CEH still shows up in your resume, and it's still going to get picked up by the applicant tracking system, but you're also still telling a truth about which certification you really have. And if you've got OSCP or something like that, I would say the same thing, right? Sort of for hiring purposes, say that OSCP is equivalent to CEH, even though we know it's not. But you do have to do things like that in order to get through these applicant tracking systems. All right. So anyway, here's some options, right? Practical network penetration tester, OSCP, as I said, and then an anti-siphon course, introduction to pen testing, and then you could go into the cyber range, and you could get the AST certification, and then what would you do? Well, you'd still have CEH on your resume, but then you would pair it with one of these. And again, what are you doing here? You're trying to satisfy the human resources filters, and at the same time, you're trying to send a signal to hiring managers. All right. So I hope that was helpful. And as I wrap up here and transition into Q&A, I want to remind you, we have this podcast, and we've got I think we're coming up on 70 episodes. And it's got a lot of really good, good evergreen material in the prior episodes. So if you're even trying to figure out what job do I even want, there's some really great back episodes that can help you with that. If you're a hiring manager and you're trying to understand, what are job seekers, what are job hunters actually struggling with today? What is it that they're asking for help with? You can listen to our podcast and get some ideas about what people are struggling with, and that's going to help you as well actually find talented people and figure out how to actually get folks who could choose really to work anywhere to choose to work with you, right? Because especially if you're a smaller org and you don't have a big budget, you've got to find other ways to appeal to very talented people, right? And often that comes back to the way that you do things or the way that you support them. Do you give them a sandbox in Azure or in AWS so they can have their own little private play area? It's amazing to me some of the things that people really find are attractive, that employers can do to them that really don't cost much money at all. But just giving them some things that makes their experience better. when they come into work every day. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. So that's the presentation that I wanted to share with you. Happy to go over to Q&A. Really appreciate that, again, that you were here. I'm always interested in talking to people about these topics. So I've got my email address on the slide here, and I'm on Discord, so you can hit me up in Discord, or you can send me an email, and I read every email that you send me. I'm not always able to respond to every single email, but I do love to get feedback from folks about these ideas. That's how I get better, and so I hope this was helpful to you.
Hey, Kip, thanks so much for joining us today for this presentation. I know you and I had talked a lot about this, and we had both Megan and I have come from organizations where we've been with the certification portion of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know I continue to tell you the same story about the fact that I don't take test well. I just don't take test well, right?
Yeah.
But if you can help me solve a real world problem, I can do that, right? I mean, if I can get in and do a hands-on thing, that's something I can do.
Right.
And so I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about certifications and what's important and and I'm thankful that you brought up, ACE and anti-siphon training and some of the things that we have going. And I know there's lots of opportunities out there for people as well, not just with us.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's really what I want to call people's attention to, right? Is that skills-based training as an approach, or skills-based certification, I mean, as an approach, right? Hiring managers really should be using more of that, and they shouldn't just hit the easy button and say, oh, I'll just go with the traditional cert. I really, in my experience, see and have experienced that it is a much better predictor of somebody being successful on the job. And that's really what I think as a hiring manager, right? That's really what you want, right? Is you want to identify people who are really going to show up and contribute to the team as fast as possible. And so, I just think this is a really powerful way to help make that happen. And for the people out there who are really good at solving practical problems, I wanted to encourage them, right? Don't just take the test and get the traditional cert. Go get something that's more hands-on. I like ACE also because it's more affordable. I've looked at some of the price points on some of the other, like OSCP is excellent, but it's really expensive, like super expensive compared to the other ones, right? And so not everybody can afford that. And so I like that ACE is by comparison a lot more affordable. And one of the reasons why I hang out with you guys is because everybody here is excellent at what they do, and also because you guys are generous and you share, and you don't make people who showed up and are just trying to figure it out from scratch, you don't make them feel like idiots. Everybody is like warm and welcoming. And oh, I got to tell you, I was hanging out on some Facebook groups not too long ago, and there were some people that were trying to get into cybersecurity, and they would show up and they'd say, well, how do I do this? And the responses were just cringy, right? Like there would be people saying things like, well, if you can't Google that, then you don't deserve to be in this industry, stuff like that. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like they know how to Google. That's not what they want. Like read under the words here, right? They want a mentor, right? They don't know how to say that to you, but that's what they want, right? They just want somebody to connect with and to just help them, right? And just so many people just who are in the industry already just don't get that. Anyway, that's why I like hanging out with you guys.
Yeah.
You get that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of gatekeeping that we're trying to knock down those gates and let people know that, you can come and join some of our classes for free. I mean, we just want you to be here. We want you to learn. We want to share knowledge. That's what we're here for. So
yeah, and that's how I approach all my work. So like, with you guys, I'm, I do a lot of teaching, but as a virtual chief information security officer, that's how I go to market with my company. Is I go as a teacher. I wrote a book. I give my book away to people who are interested in working with us, and I spend a lot of time teaching them about what's really going on in the world. And so that's just how I roll. I show up with the heart of a teacher, and I want to share, and I want to be generous, and that's why I like hanging out with you guys, because you're the same way.
And Kip, your book is called Fire Doesn't Innovate, right?
It is. That's right. Yep. It's called Fire Doesn't Innovate, and there's a couple of use cases for my book. I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about
Absolutely.
that. So if you're here right now in the audience, the use case for you is this. If you're trying to have a meaningful, ongoing conversation about cybersecurity and cyber risk management, let's say with a senior decision maker, maybe it's a CFO or somebody like that, and you just don't have the vocabulary, right? Like you're just not even sure how to really start that conversation or maybe keep it going. If you read part 1 of my book, I wrote part 1 of my book specifically so any CFO could read it and understand it. I don't have a lot of jargon in there, and I use tons of stories and anecdotes and metaphors and analogies. And so the use case for you is read part 1 of my book and then go to that person that you want to have this ongoing conversation with and say, hey, let's have a book club. Here's this book. Would you read part 1? Because I just read part 1. And there's some things in part 1 that I think apply to us, and I would love to talk with you about them, but I think you got to read it first and then see if they'll do that with you. That's a pretty non-threatening request. And and typically they'll say yes, or at least they'll say, well, I don't have time to read a book. Can you just share with me what it is that you want? And then you could tell the story, right? Steal from my book, just tell the story. Well, in the book, there's a story about this organization, blah, blah, blah. Right? And then you can start having that conversation. So that's a really good use case for my book.
Awesome. And I just posted a link in the Discord from Amazon if you'd like to go in and learn a little bit more about it.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Velda. So, and just so everybody knows, I've got soft cover if you like to hold a book in your hands. I've got Kindle and I've got Audible too. And I actually narrated my own Audible book because I always appreciate it when the authors are narrating their own book. And it was kind of fun, actually, to do it.
Yeah, I think that traditionally, like you were saying in your presentation, I think one of a big pain point for people to hire in this industry is they don't know how to write the job description for it. So, they just pull from here and they pull from here and they think that this one certification covers it all, and it just doesn't, Yeah. So,
yeah, there's a lot of copying, right? I'm going to copy the job description over here because it's going to save me time. Or they just let the HR person, like they say to the HR person, I need pen testers, right? And so the HR, the internal recruiter goes out to Google and takes a job description from somebody else, and then they sort of work it over and repurpose it. And that happens a lot, and that's why we get awful job descriptions that say things like 15 years of experience required or 5 years of experience required in a technology that hasn't been out for more than a year and a half. Stuff like that, right? Just kind of brain dead stuff, where hiring managers are shooting themselves in the foot, because why? Because that one principle or that one idea that in the hiring handbook where we say, look, don't just say that hiring is an important function, actually take the time and do it. And that means don't just blatantly copy job descriptions, copy them, sure, but take the time to actually work them over. So that they say exactly what you're looking for, and put some thought into who you're looking for too. By the way, if you don't have a distinct team culture going on, right? If you're just sort of letting the culture happen depending on who's there that day, that might work or it might not work. I like to be more intentional about culture myself, right? Because that's going to help you attract the right people.
Right. Absolutely.
Kip, Droopy, he just asked a question. How do you handle your overqualified denial? He said that she says that's what's most frustrating to me.
Yeah. So the way that I advise people on that is, first of all, it all goes back to the job description. Your resume and your application should be tailored to the job description. Let's say you've got, and I'm just going to make this up as a kind of an extreme example to make the point. Let's say you've got a PhD in information systems or something like that, and the job description doesn't require a PhD. Let's say the job description mentions a bachelor's degree. Well, for God's sakes, don't put you have a PhD on your resume. Don't do it. There's no law that says you have to put your PhD on the resume. And then, so maybe you have a master's degree or whatever it is that you think is calling you out or telling hiring managers that you're overqualified. Don't put it on there. Now, I'm not saying lie and don't share the information if you're asked about it. I don't want you to violate your integrity. I'm just pointing out that there is no law or regulation that requires you to present yourself as an overqualified candidate when you apply for a job.
Good advice. Good advice. Here's another one, Kip. Do you agree with pre-interview testing so you know what they know versus the certification?
Pre-interview testing. Well, I do think that it's helpful. I believe the thing you have to watch out for as a hiring manager is, are you being fair to the candidate based on how much you're asking from them and how early in the process you're asking it for? I mean, I've heard some stories about people who were essentially being asked to provide free consulting so early on in the process that they felt exploited. And one of the ideals in the handbook is that when you go out to hire people, rather than see it as a transaction, you should see it as a relationship building opportunity with people, even if you choose not to hire them. So you should be thinking about, is somebody going to feel respected by my requests, or are they going to feel exploited by my requests in terms of testing and that sort of thing in advance? So that's kind of the litmus test. And if you don't know if your internal guidance system on that isn't calibrated, ask somebody. Go ask somebody and say, if I asked you to do this thing pre-interview, how would you feel? Would you feel I was asking for too much or not? And then you can get calibrated that way.
Hey, Kip, another one from Discord. How do you handle balancing the HR certs versus practical learning versus actually living?
Yeah, I know they ask for a lot, right? I think I'm going to repeat some advice, which is get really, really, really focused on what it is that you want to do. I see a lot of people just sort of over preparing themselves, I guess is what I would say, because they go out and they look at that big certification. If you've seen that graphic, there's this really cool graphic that has every security certification on it, and it's just this giant wall of logos. And I see people trying to figure out which ones plural should I get. And they just go on, like a cert collection spree, and they just start collecting all these things. And I don't think that's necessary. I think if you can focus on what it is you really want, then I think you can get 2, maybe 3 certs at the most, and then stop getting certifications at that point. Then transition over to a skills-based one so that you've got that covered. And then if there's a CTF or something like that that's available to help keep your skills sharp, then do that. But I definitely see people over preparing and running themselves ragged, and I just don't think that's necessary.
Hey, Kip.
Ryan? There you go.
Yeah, I got some questions here from the Go to Webinar questions box. And the first one I see sounds pretty good. It says, I don't have a college degree. I'm over 50, 30 years experience. Finding the degree is often a blocker, but I don't want to spend 4 years in college when I want to be planning my retirement in less than 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you do? Well, I would say, I would agree, don't go get a college degree on a knee-jerk reaction basis, right? What I've noticed is that a lot of industries are de-emphasizing college degree as a requirement for the job. The tech industry is definitely de-emphasizing it, and I think Google is leading the way by actually providing Google-based coursework that they consider to be a suitable substitute for a college degree. The U.S. federal government has actually de-emphasized college degrees as hiring criteria as well. So I would start by researching industries and organizations that have explicitly de-emphasized degrees as a requirement. You might also consider freelancing, because freelancing really is about what you can do. And so those are a couple of choices.
Kip, here's something, and I think it's worth a mention. It said, and we talked about this, should you list previously held certs? So say you have the CISSP and you let it lapse. Should you list that you were a previous holder?
Only if the job description says you need it. If the job description,
even if you previously held it but you aren't currently current.
Okay, so let's say the job description says CISSP and you had one and yours lapsed. Well, then you'd be like me because I got my CISSP in 1997 and I stopped maintaining it in 2013. And why did I do that? Because I'd gotten to a point in my career where nobody cared if I had a current CISSP or not. It didn't matter. So what I put is when people ask me what are my certifications, I put earned CISSP 1997 or whatever. Sometimes I leave the year off. It just depends. But it's accurate to say I earned it. And unless somebody asks me, is it current? Then I'll say, well, no, it's not. But it was current from this year to that year, right? And so a lot of people think like, oh, I got to disclose all this stuff up front. No, you don't. You don't. In fact, you don't want to disclose everything up front because you want to give people an opportunity to create some curiosity, a hiring manager, right? To like, oh, I want to know more about that. You know, ooh, they said something really interesting. It's kind of like the newspaper. I think of resumes as like a newspaper article, right? You have to have this really killer headline to convince me that I should read the first paragraph of the news story. Okay, now if that paragraph's really amazing, I'm going to read the next paragraph and the next paragraph and the next paragraph. I'm going to read until I'm not interested anymore. And that's what really a resume is supposed to do. And when I'm a hiring manager and I'm looking at your resume, guess what? Everything you have on the resume, I'm filtering it through the job description that I wrote, and I'm looking for how well are you connecting with me in your resume with respect to a very specific job description. And so, you know, if you start mentioning stuff that has nothing to do with the JD, or if you start putting in information that makes me go, you know, that makes me wonder in a bad way or in a derogatory way, that's not helping you.
Yeah, and usually like certifications or education is the last thing that's listed anyway. So if you've lost them at the top, you're not going to gain them at the bottom.
Oh, that's true, right? In fact, it really is just like a headline. The way I train people to write resumes is I say, like, you at the very top, you better hook me right away, because if you don't, I'll never even get to the middle of the page, of the first page. So.
Very good. Well,
How do you think organizations look at CTF skills?
Well, I don't think organizations look at them. I think hiring managers look at them, right? And so that's going to vary depending on the hiring manager, right? So somebody like John Strand, you know, he has gone on the record as saying like CTF skills are amazing and important and huge in terms of his hiring screening, right? But you won't necessarily get the same behavior from other hiring managers. So that's what I found is it really varies. And so one thing I encourage people to do is once you find a job that you want at a company that you want to work at, figure out who the hiring manager is, right? And Jason Blanchard does a fantastic job of teaching people how to do that, you know, over on his Twitch streams, right? He teaches you how to use OSINT in an ethical way to figure out who the hiring managers are, and then go learn something about them, right? To get some ideas to whether they have ever said in Twitter or someplace else, you know, that they like CTFs, right? You know, one of the things that when you get, yes, thank you for putting that in the chat in Discord. So hiring managers, you want to know something about them so that you can identify with them, because here's the bottom line, and I know a lot of people don't like this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. People like to hire people that they know, like, and trust. It's what it means to be human. So you should know something about the person who's hiring so that you can get some ideas to what you should be sharing with them.
Great. I'm going to post a link again for Kip's upcoming training. If you'd like to learn more about it, Kip, you want to just do a quick overview on what the training is going to include?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two main takeaways from the training. The first takeaway is how can you build the team that you really, really want with the kinds of talented people who could choose to work anywhere, but actually choose to work with you. So I just hired somebody for my team who could easily make twice what I could afford to give them in direct compensation, but he chose to work with my company because I could give him things that the other companies could not give him. There were a lot of intangibles that were very important to him, and he wasn't getting it. And I said, well, that's fine. We can do that. And some of it was mentoring, and some of it was, just different things. Sandbox. Like I pay for him to have a sandbox. My company pays for him to have a test, sandbox in all these different places. And it's funny how these the little things that people really value that as a hiring manager is completely discretionary, totally in your control if you just think about it. So I'm going to help you figure out how to attract really talented people and get them to stay, even though recruiters are calling people all the time, offering them gobs of money and stock options, right? But it's not all about money. Not everybody is going to be motivated by that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is once you've built the team that you want, then okay, you need to get out of your program and you need to make sure that you're an influential person in your organization, so that when other business leaders in the organization are thinking about changing something big that you would want to know about in advance, you want those folks coming to you before they make those changes and talking to you and asking you, hey, how can we do this in a secure way? What you don't want is for changes to be pushed out and then for somebody to mention to you in passing, oh, hey, you might want to go secure that thing. Well, if you're too busy working in your program and you haven't gone and taken the time to go out and build working relationships with other senior decision makers, that's a big blocker for being the kind of influential leader that I think most people want to be. And so that's the other thing we're going to focus on in my training is, once you get your team in place, then what? How do you stand on that as a platform and build the kind of influence that that you really want? And I'm going to talk about that too.
Okay.
I
Very
do
cool.
something real quick that's kind of on the topic, but not really. Somebody in Discord said everyone right now is OSIN Team John Strand. And from my viewpoint, I just started full time back on January 24th of last month. So I've not even a month been a full time employee. But when you find a boss like John actually, he cares about his people. He wants to take care of his people. So it kind of goes along with what you said. Like you're looking for something that you can be a part of. And John really, really makes you feel like you are a part of something when you work for him.
Yeah.
This company is by far the best company I have ever worked for in my life. Just simply because he cares. He doesn't act like he cares. He cares. And he actually
behavior, not his words, but his behavior tells you he cares. His behavior tells you you're part of something that has purpose.
Right.
Yeah, and see, these are the ideals that the hiring manager handbook really talk about, and not only talk about, but give you a way to practically do it. That's the thing a lot of people struggle with, hiring managers. It's like, well, yeah, I care about my people. Well, how are you showing them? Well, I don't know. I mean, I try, and if you've never done it before and you don't have a mentor, then, yeah, you're going to flail a little bit, but that's what the handbook's for, is to give you a place to actually go to find the practical, how do I do it? And to the extent that the handbook doesn't have that in there, well, guess what? That handbook was put together by a couple of dozen smart, hiring managers, and they're obviously interested in the topic. So go talk to one of them.
Outstanding. Well, Kip, again, it's always a pleasure to host you on these Hackin casts. We love having you, and we're glad that you're always willing to be part of this. Thank you so much. Thanks to all who joined us today. I love this idea of the hiring handbook. I know when Kip and I first talked about it, it was like, this is important. Pardon me. So I'm really excited to see it come to fruition, to be on our platform. Really excited to see you in person at Wild West Hackin Fest in San Diego. I'm sure, Kip, you'll probably hang around and talk to people in the Discord for a little bit if you
I
can.
will.
It'd be
Yep.
great. We've had a lot of people ask about your slides. If you could send them over to one of us.
I think I have permissions to put them in the slides channel, so I'll do that. And if I don't, then yeah, I'll get somebody to do
All
it.
right. That would be fantastic. We also have a webcast coming up next week. Jake, what's the name of it? It's going to be kind of cool.
Next week is so you want to build a community in InfoSec. It's a panel, so it'll be a panel talk that Adam Moshinshi is moderating.
So we'll be adding that to the lineup here. We'll be adding a link for you to register. So we'd love to have you come back and do that with us as well. But again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for Kip for being here. As always, it's such a pleasure.
Oh, it's been fantastic. Okay, everybody, have a great week.
All right. Thank
All right.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
We are ending the webinar.